We are live on Facebook and Instagram. Welcome, good morning. It's the PT on Ice Daily Show with the Institute of Clinical Excellence. My name is Kelly Benfey. I'm a TA within our fitness athlete division, and it is my first time on the podcast. So if you're logging in live, hey everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining me on my debut. I'm super excited to be here. So we have a couple things on the schedule coming up soon with our fitness athlete crew. So this weekend we have Fitness Athlete Live down in Nashville. Mitch and Alan are headed down there, and it's their first time on the road in many months now. So I know they're super excited to get going down there with Zach and Alexis Morgan. So if you're on the roster for that, you're in for a great weekend. And then on Monday, we have 2 online courses starting with our fitness athlete crew. So the Fitness Athlete Essential Foundations is starting Monday, September 14th. There are 4 spots left. That course always sells out. So if you're on the fence, don't wait any longer. Go ahead and sign up now. That will be with Mitch, Alan, and Gmo. And then our Fitness Athlete Pregnancy and Postpartum course is also starting on Monday. So if you're looking to level up your game treating those pregnant and postpartum athletes, would highly recommend it. That will be with Christina Previtt and Kelsey Valentine. So don't hesitate any longer to get registered for that. And then I personally just signed up yesterday. I'm stepping outside of my fitness athlete bubble to take the persistent pain course that's also starting online on Monday with Justin Dunaway. I believe you can still register for that as well. So hop on over to ptonice.com and click on courses and hop in that course with me if you'd like to learn more about that persistent pain course. So it's Friday. That means it's Fitness Athlete Friday, of course. So what are we talking about? We're going to talk about the process of introducing the deadlift to your newer athletes. We know that we don't go from walking in the door with back pain to loading up the barbell right away. Of course, there's a handful of steps in between to make that process very smooth, very successful, once you've decided that your person is appropriate to start deadlifting to strengthen their back. So what I want to talk about is briefly reviewing that process, and then I want to talk about the 3 most common faults that I typically will see athletes make in this process, and then I'll give you a quick easy tip or technique that I often will use to reduce the likelihood of those faults, or just increase the success that your athletes are going to have during this process. So once you've decided this athlete is ready to start deadlifting, which is awesome and exciting, right? The first step will be learning how to hip hinge. And so typically starting with that PVC pipe hip hinge, you have the 3 points of contact: your head, your upper back, your lower back, maintaining all 3 points of contact the whole time as you're learning how to flex from the hips, maintaining your neutral spine position. So start grooving that hip hinge mechanics. Once they've nailed that down, you're progressing likely to a kettlebell or maybe a dumbbell. If you don't have kettlebells in your clinic, you can have the dumbbell vertically and hold on to the top of the head, right? So whether it's the dumbbell or kettlebell, that's where I'm usually starting to add load with, and usually from an elevated surface. So setting the dumbbell or kettlebell on a higher, like a step, a box, 12 inches or so, basically to shorten that range of motion and make it a little bit easier to start to pick up a weight off the ground. As we're coaching and cueing and improving movement patterns, we're gradually adding load as tolerated, and we're working our way down to being able to lift that weight from the floor. Once they're doing great lifting from the floor, they're eventually, fortunately, probably going to outgrow the kettlebell or dumbbell, right? And so that's when a good time to transition to the barbell, because then the sky's the limit. You can add plenty of weight on that barbell pretty easily for most people. So that's the general process that I'll follow. That is a little less intimidating. It gradually introduces them over time to being able to start to deadlift the barbell with great mechanics. So in this process, I would say my top 3 faults that I'll see include, the first one that we'll talk about is an anterior bar path. And so if you're not even at the barbell yet, that anterior bar path can just be simply the weight getting too far in front of their center of gravity. The farther that barbell or the weight gets out in front of the athlete, the harder it's going to feel. If you've ever picked up a bar or a weight with something way out in front of you, it's obviously much more challenging. So keep in mind, these athletes are probably coming to you with a little bit of back pain. That's why we're teaching them how to deadlift at this point, right? So if we can ensure that the weight stays nice and close to the body the whole time, that's going to make them feel more comfortable. It's a better, strong pulling position. And so that is probably one of the most common faults that I typically will try to reduce the likelihood of occurring by this little trick. So when I see a lot of newer athletes start with the elevated kettlebell deadlift, I often see that they're putting the step or that like elevated surface out in front of the athlete. For example, like this. And so the weight, basically that target for setting your weight down is already out in front of them. So it allows them in this early process to start drilling that anterior bar path. And so what I commonly will do that I found is really helpful right from the start is put the step behind the athlete. So, and then use the corner of the box so that they don't have anywhere to go, but really close to them. So simply standing on the corner of the box, and then they have to reach straight down, pick up the weight, stand it straight up, and then set it straight down. So if they're making that anterior bar path fault, they're going to simply miss that target. So early on in this process, when you're first starting to put a weight in their hands, they're already keeping it nice and close because that's all they have to do, essentially. So that's my little technique that I find is secretly really helpful. Just place that surface behind the athlete, have them start with the weight right in between the ankles. So that's number one. Number two is overextension fault. So that's that loss of a good neutral spine positioning as they start to move weight. And so you've probably seen that athlete that demonstrates a really nice PVC pipe hip hinge, and we're grooving, we're ready to start getting the weight in their hand. And then as soon as you take the PVC pipe away, you put a weight in their hand, everything goes a little bit nuts. I think what the newer athlete to the deadlift is focusing on is lifting the weight up and kind of muscling through it by using their trunk to stand up, which promotes that extension fault in their deadlift versus keeping a neutral spine during the hip hinge. And so another drill that I'll commonly use at this point is a band wrapped around the rig. I'll have the athlete step inside of the loop and place it right at the hip crease. And in that starting position, they have plenty of tension on the band. And so this is something you can introduce as early as during the PVC pipe hip hinge learning stage, or in the stage where they're picking up kettlebell up from an elevated surface. And so what that does, it promotes that nice posterior weight shift of the hips, and then as they stand up, they have to engage those hips a little bit more to learn how to use that hip hinge to drive the legs through the ground, extend the hips to stand way up versus pulling the weight up with their trunk. And so that for me teaches the athlete really easily how to utilize their hip hinge mechanics from the PVC once we have weight in their hands. So the third most common fault that I will also see in newer athletes as well as more experienced athletes too is the setup position for the deadlift. I think for me personally, it took me maybe about 4 or 5 months to realize that the deadlift position was different than the clean. So I was trying to squat all my deadlifts for a long time and it felt really awkward. And so if you've taken any of our fitness athlete courses, you'll know that the setup position is crucial, whether it's the snatch, the clean, the deadlift. It's very important for having a successful lift. So if that setup position is off, it's going to throw off many steps in the rest of the lift. It's hard to make up for it later. So with the deadlift, now we're talking more so transitioning from the kettlebell to the barbell. That's a hard position to find right off the bat. And so this is a short, simple cue that I use when I'm coaching CrossFit classes, as well as teaching or coaching athletes how to deadlift one-on-one with my practice. This is a simple, easy step that almost seems so simple that I thought it was really shocking that I didn't think of that already. When I was at one of the fitness athlete courses out in Pittsburgh, we were teaching, and the coach at that gym, Total Pursuit Athletics, showed us this. So his name's Alex. Shout out to Alex. Thank you. I'm still using this. and I find it really easy, and it's easy to follow. Most of my athletes haven't had trouble with it yet. So now once we're at that deadlift, or we're ready to deadlift the bar, to find that nice deadlift position versus squatting it, I simply will tell them to start with the barbell right over the shoelaces, so nice and close to the shins, and start with the palms on the front of the quads. And all I'm having you do is reach straight down for the bar and grab on. That's usually going to land them in a really good position to pull the bar straight off the ground in a straight line. Straight lines are strong lines when it comes to deadlifting. So what this does is it pushes the hips back and it keeps the hips nice and high, and then they, boom, land right in that good position. So I have a couple athletes that have been deadlifting in the clinic for a little while now, and they still will set up in that way. So I find that it's really helpful to give them the tools to feel confident walking up to a barbell, knowing they're in a really good, strong position, and then going from there. So those are the top 3 faults that I'll typically see and work with our newer athletes. I do want to give a special shout out to lat engagement. That's also a really common fault that we see with the barbell deadlift. Having the lats engaged is going to increase the stiffness of your whole trunk, and it's going to do a really good job of keeping the barbell nice and close to you the whole time to avoid that anterior bar path. And so in this early learning process, I'm typically not trying to throw too many cues while coaching and working through things. In this early process, I'm more concerned with getting an athlete hip hinging, getting a little bit of load in their hands, and keeping that load nice and close to their body. Once we're more familiar with it and we're beyond that early learning phase, that's when I'm more so starting to perfect the motion a little bit more, maybe give the cues of like pinch the oranges like in between your arm, whatever verbal cue works for you, or the drill of having a PVC pipe attached to a band on a rig pulling away from you, so you have to actively use those engage those lats to keep that bar nice and close to you. So I didn't want to just skip over that because that's probably one of the more common faults that I'll see even with athletes that have been deadlifting for a while. Those are all the faults that I'm going to talk about for today. There are obviously plenty other ones, so if you can think of more to create some discussion, feel free to drop those in the comments or reach out to me. I obviously would love to talk about deadlifting and coaching people through that with you. Other than that, that's all I have for today. I'm headed off to the Total Spine Thrust course tomorrow with Justin Denway, and Gmo's going to be there, so I'm super excited for that. If you're on the list, I'll see you there. And other than that, have a great weekend, and we'll be back on Monday with more PT on Ice Daily Show action.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review, and be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.